All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Scott Chen. Today we have Angelica Oung, my friend who from Twitter who talks about Taiwan, about nuclear energy, and recently a lot about mainland China. She just went on a long tour through parts of China in Xinjiang and then to Xi'an and Beijing. I thought it'd be really cool to bring her onto my first podcast, the Already Dawn podcast, and talk about her experience. Welcome to the podcast, Angelica.
Thanks, Scott. I'm totally honored and can't wait to have a conversation.
I'm curious, how did this trip come about, especially with the Xinjiang stuff, because that's a more niche area in China to go to, right?
I've just been trying to do as much traveling on the mainland as possible because I think China is the biggest story in our lifetimes. And sitting right here in Taipei, of course, I want to get a piece of it. So when my friend Xiang Yu told me there was an opportunity, not just go to China to visit, but potentially start a travel venture there, I was totally intrigued. And I'm going to 卖个关子 and not completely drop everything yet, but I think it's fair to say that we were there to scope out opportunities for creating the kind of travel experiences that will allow people from around the world to see the real China. And Xinjiang was a great place to start because not only is it amazingly beautiful, incredibly exotic, incredible history, and it's also a part of the mainland where it really pays for you to go with a tour group. If you want to go to Chongqing on your own and hit the Instagrammable spots, you can probably do that just as a solo traveler fairly easily. But Xinjiang is one-sixth the size of the mainland, right? It's one-sixth of the area. And just getting around is a huge pain. Plus, there are still like travel permits that you have to obtain. Even we had to do that. We had a group of mainlanders and Taiwanese like myself and Xiang Yu. We're like, how can we, first of all, have an experience in Xinjiang and check it out ourselves? And then think about how to recreate this experience in a way that somebody from the US or Europe can drop in and get a lot out of a week-long trip.
I see. Thanks for the context. I've been traveling through mainland China quite a bit too. Right before you guys went on our trip, I was there for a whole month, but it was mostly in northern slash central northern China. And getting around even to say tier three, tier four, even tier five cities was very easy because I could take the HSR, the high speed
Yes.
rail. Yeah. But I guess in a lot of parts in Xinjiang, that's not possible yet. So you had to probably take other forms of transportation. So that makes it a little more challenging.
Yeah, the problem with the high-speed rail for Xinjiang is that the population density is so low, the utilization rate would just not make sense. So they don't tend to have rail there. You fly around in Xinjiang, or you take road transportation. And I'm telling you, just the roads in and of themselves, they are huge engineering projects. And we went on this one particular road. It's called Panlong Gudao, the Panlong Ancient Road, and it snakes up this mountain in dozens of switchbacks, back and forth and back and forth. And you just realize, just without this road, like this community would have been totally isolated. And you see the spectacular scenery and you realize, forget about high speed rail, just the fact that this place has roads is a huge infrastructure achievement. And it's done a lot for the people of that region, obviously. One of the things that we're really trying to do with our tour is to make sure you're not just there to see Xinjiang, you're there to know the place, including the people and the history and the geography. So we got to know the people there. And Panlong Gudao is in a place on the Pamir Plateau. It's pretty high up, actually. There's actually a little bit of altitude acclimatation that you have to do because the oxygen there is not as concentrated. And we got to meet the people there. And they weren't Uyghurs, actually. On the Pamir Plateau, a lot of them were Kazakhs. A lot of them were Tajiks, Chinese Tajiks. So you got to learn a lot more about the history and people of the place and how their lives have changed. And the more you see, the more you travel, the more the conventional narrative about Xinjiang just does not stand up because it seems like a place that is spectacular, rapidly improving, and the people there are excited. They're excited. Obviously, they have their tradition, but they also have a future. And the future that they see is one where they can develop and stay in their homes and thrive.
Yeah, I'd definitely love to talk about the political aspects later down the line. But for now, I want to touch on two things. One is that I'm good friends with Shangri as well. And the details he's shared with me about the trips that you guys lead is very focused on a local experience, right? And that's like super cool because I think even for myself, when I get around, sometimes I'm just in my own head a little bit and don't force, if I use that word, force myself to go out of my way to go do the most local experience possible and kind of do go with the tourist trap routes a bit. And I think just like seeing people from different walks of life, seeing the maybe the more nitty-gritty stuff, or at least the more real stuff. I think that's super cool. And the second thing I want to say is, I don't know if you know this guy on Twitter named VB Knives, but he has like hot takes on culture and especially American culture quite a bit. And one thing he mentioned a while back is that the metric you can use to that the one clear metric that you know the U.S. is rich is because even the most rural places have good maintained road infrastructure, and that's what China has now. Even in Xinjiang, as like as remote and as historically not well off as the province was. So it's really cool to see the new development in these like more remote areas. So as mentioned, I'm saying remote for a third time because it's a very remote part of China. What would you say was like the biggest culture shock or surprises you faced while going through Xinjiang?
I didn't really have too much in the way of expectations. And I think what I didn't understand was how it's not a desert. Because before I left, I assumed that Xinjiang was going to be mostly like a desert. And it was like that in Kashgar, dry and sandy. But as you go up the Pamir Plateau, it's a very mountainous, almost like more like what I would expect for Tibet. And yeah, the scenery are spectacular, like just some of the most beautiful lakes I've ever seen in my life. And I got to ride on a camel. And it's really just like when you're driving around, the sights are just incredible. But I have to say, the memories that really stuck with me, really like the conversation I've had with the people. So, for instance, on the Pamir Plateau, one of the mountains there is a training mountain for people who want to climb Mount Everest.
Oh, well.
I think it's called Kurzak Ata or something like that. Anyhow, we were talking to Brother Ma. He's a Kazakh and he's a mountain guide. And he told us that back in the 90s, he and his brothers, not literally brothers, but they're his work brothers. They were working as mountaineers, the first generation of mountaineers supporting the Western mountaineers who want to climb Everest by climbing this easier, smaller mountain first. And they were doing stuff, pretty routine stuff, like just preparing some paths one day when he fell down a crevasse. And his brothers, the two guys who were up there with him, they didn't give up on him, even though he were like many meters down. They got him out. And for a while, it looked like everything was going to be all right. But then what happened was they were so high up that his two brothers, the guys who were with him, died of oxygen deprivation. And that's the thing. He was fine because they rescued him. But when you overwork yourself up in those altitudes, you don't even know that you've put yourself in mortal danger. And he was like, because my brothers are up there, because there's no way to get the bodies down, I've enjoyed 35 more years of life, and my life has been a wonderful life. But I feel like I have to live my life in a way that respects these guys that gave up their life for me. He actually works as a mountain rescuer in his spare time. So he has saved countless people who got into trouble on the Pamir Plateau. He says, I can travel all over China. There's people who are willing to put me up because they're the guys I saved. Sometimes the guys he saved come back every year to meet him, just to pay their respects. And every year he goes to the mountain and pays his respects just from the foot of the mountain to his brothers. And I was able to witness that. We stopped by the foot of the mountain. I saw him go out, put 2 cigarettes down in the rocks, in the crevices of the rocks, and smoke 1 cigarette while looking up at the mountain. And he says, it's for the rest of my life, it's going to be my goal to get their bodies down and buried properly. And that's just one story I heard along the way. But it goes to show, like, traveling is really about the people you meet along the way. And the fact that he's gone from working basically as a Sherpa, and then now he's got his own business and he does all this rescue stuff as a volunteer. And his son is actually training to be a doctor in Germany. And he says, I want my son to come back. And to start a small clinic locally. So it's actually an amazing developmental story as well. And it's people have the opportunity to develop, even in this very remote, very tough environment. That was a really profound experience for me. And I'm just like, wow, we want to be able to show these people the places show people from all over the world these amazing places, hear those amazing stories, meet amazing local people. And I think that would be a really cool way to, I guess, monetize my newfound interest in China. And hey, everybody's China maxing, right? I hope to invite, if you're in that very Chinese time of your life, why not get in touch and we can China max together?
Yeah, definitely be down. We're all, whether if China maxing were in style or not, we would still be doing it anyway because that's what we're interested in. But just a lot of pieces lining up together at the same time, which is very fortuitous.
Yeah.
I will say, as you share the story, I got a lot of chills. I'm still feeling like chills right now. And I can only imagine the guilt that Mr. Ma, what's his name? Mr. Ma feels, because like 2 of his brothers basically sacrificed their lives so he could live. And have you seen Top Gun 1 and Top Gun 2?
I've seen the new one. I haven't seen the old
The new
one.
one. Okay. And there's tension between Tom Cruise, Maverick, and one of the kids in his class, because the kid was the son of Maverick's friend, Goose. And in movie 1, because Maverick was much more of a flyer, and then because of his recklessness, he got Goose killed. And he became a lot more mature after that, and he always carried that guilt with him. So that just reminds me of the story you just shared. That experience like changed them like forever.
I
That was
think
really, really beautiful story.
all of us have people we're grateful for in our lives who have sacrificed to make our lives better, maybe not in such a dramatic way. And I think that's a way we can pay it forward, is by doing for others and remembering those that come before. And as I embark on this adventure of perhaps creating this experience for people, I'm always thinking I want people to come here and get more out of their trip than they would on their own. And I want it to be a mix. I want them to have the touristy experiences too, but then I want them to go to one day on the last day before we flew out of Kashgar, the local travel partner that we've been working with, which is okay, let's go celebrate, let's go and have some beers. So we went out to this local bar by a lake in Kashgar, and I looked around and I was like, oh my goodness, I think we might be the only Han people here. Everybody else was Uyghur or I don't know, some other kind of minority. It's really difficult for us to tell. But we're just in this vibey, cool bar with all these people having a good time and listening to some local bands. And I'm just having this, okay, it wasn't great beer. It was Budweiser of all things. But I took a look at Xiangyu and I told him, Xiangyu, this bar needs to be on the experience. I think people would like this because it's just a moment where you just get to hang out in a place that is not for tourists, but you feel perfectly welcome. And it was so cool. It was like, we had our beers, and as we were about to take off, this girl who was holding a snake was like, wait, you guys are leaving? But my friend is going to be dancing with the snake later. And we're like, no, sorry, we're old. We have to go. And I'm just like, what a cool Kashgar story. And I'm looking forward to more of those. Plus the most delicious lamb I've ever had in my life. Really, the food in Xinjiang was so delicious. And I didn't actually gain any weight. I usually gain a lot of weight in when I go to the mainland China. But I think because the Xinjiang food is more like meat than carbs. So there is carb. It's more meaty. So I think together with the a lot of walking, I actually did okay.
Yeah, I usually also eat a lot when I'm in mainland China, but I also don't really gain weight just because I'm just going around places all the time. And I think, I don't know, maybe I'm just like pulling stuff out of my ass right now, but going to somewhere new, I think your brain is like more active, right? Okay, you're like taking in all this new environment and like new inputs such that, uh, I wouldn't say stressful is the right word, but it's just like more, um, what's the word?
I have to say I cannot relate because I gain a ton of weight in China when I'm on my own. Between I'm addicted to their convenience tea stuff. So I love their chagis, and I'm always like drinking too many teas and sugary coffees. And plus, when I'm traveling on my own, I always want to try one of everything. And then I feel bad that I'm leaving food behind, so I overeat. But on the travel experience, I think that's another thing that's cool because we got to try a lot of stuff. But because we had a group, so we could share. And yeah, the food was so good. The lamb, I really like lamb, and it was just the best lamb I've ever had. Really
Yeah,
exceptional.
I really like lamb too, and I've had Xinjiang food a couple times in Shanghai, right? And there's this dish called 手抓羊, I believe,
Yes, a
which
sojaf,
yeah, so you
maybe a
must have had it.
sojaf fan, right? It's like rice and then with
Yeah,
some lamb on it. Oh, so good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So if I translate to English, it's hand pick lamb, right? And you just have a big plate of very tenderly cooked lamb, and then I think they put the spices on the side. The lamb themselves are not spiced, so you can add however you can season it however you want. And yeah, it's just like you're in food heaven, protein heaven, just heaps and heaps of meat that just taste it's very high quality stuff. And yeah, I'm very envious that you got to try it locally, and I got to have that on my that's a bucket list I'll check off down the line.
Definitely, if anybody thinks that this experience sounds intriguing, I'll be going back. And I'll be going back as a tour leader of some sort. And of course, the details are still to be announced. We don't have any for you right now, but I've just been like talking about what should be on the itinerary, what worked well, what felt missing. And I'm going to tell you, I'm excited to go back because when we go back as well, it's going to be during peak season. They're in the summer and the fall. And apparently, there's going to be incredible fruit, like the best fruit. Now, when I did my trip, because it was just a scouting trip, so we did it in April and it was really before peak season, so they didn't have any fruit that's local. But as the seasons go on, apparently you're just going to have the most outrageous figs and pomegranates and grapes and all sorts of things. Yeah, if you sign up, not only would you get to come on this journey, you also get all this amazing fruit.
I'm targeting either early or mid fall, so hopefully the fruits are still in season.
Oh, yeah,
Knock on wood.
they will be in
Knock on
season.
wood.
Don't worry. I think whenever
Okay,
we're running the tour, it'll be in the summer or the fall where there'll be plenty of good fruit.
awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Back to the topic earlier that I saved for now is more political stuff, right? Which is
Sure.
that in the West, Western media, they like to say, oh, like in Xinjiang, there is these slavery camps. All the Uyghurs are totally oppressed people, and that China is the worst thing ever in the history of ever. And obviously, that's nowhere close to the truth. I have my own explanation of what's going on, but now that you've actually seen the whole province with your eyes, I'm curious about what you can share with what's actually going on there.
I learned so much about the history of Xinjiang and the history of the Uyghur people. And what I find that I really did not know before is that okay, I'm sorry, I'm just blanking. Rumi, the more mystical kind of Islam.
Sufi Islam,
Sufi,
I believe.
yes,
Yeah,
Sufi.
yeah,
So
Sufi. Hmm.
actually, the reason why the Uyghurs became Muslim in the first place had a lot to do with the Sufi network that was all along the Silk Road. Empires rise and fall, different kind of political power fall into disarray. But if you were tapped in to this network of Sufi teachers, that was a way to guarantee your safety from Kashgar all the way out west to wherever the Silk Road ended up. And that was a big reason why Sufi Islam was like the killer app. Oh, by the way, there's Sunni too. It's kind of like you have Sunni and Shia, but then the Sufi part is a separate layer. So the so when we talk about Islam, it's the kind of Islam where people always make music. People danced. When they dance and they do that dance where they twirl around and around, it's like the Sufi in Turkey where they have the whirling dervishes. And it's one like transnational tradition. So they didn't necessarily respect national boundaries. It was like more like a invisible thread, a network that ran all the way through the Silk Road. They didn't do the very heavy veils. That's not traditional to Uyghur culture. Music was very traditional. Dancing was very traditional. And in fact, it might be because they're like a steppe people, but the status of women was quite high. And in fact, the canon of Uyghur music, the 12 mukam, the most important canonical Uyghur music, was actually gathered and arranged by a Uyghur royal woman. That is more like their tradition. And so, where did we come to this place where Uyghur Islam and extremism, it all got mashed together? Is that this tradition, this traditional Uyghur culture, it was already getting dilute. And it was getting dilute for all sorts of reasons to do with modernism. There's actually a very interesting story where the 12 Mukam were on the verge of being lost. And of all people, Zhou Enlai, yes, of the CCP, sent some musicologists to preserve it and save it. So it was like their own traditions were waning for all sorts of reasons to do with modernism, modernity really. And then a different kind of Islam came in, and it was more like the kind of Takfiri Islam from Saudi Arabia. It's very austere, And it's, in a way, you have to remember it's in opposition to traditional Uyghur culture. But it is very viral because when you think of traditional Sufi Islam, you have this network of teachers that's it's hard to upkeep. It's very like specific to a time and place. But when you have that kind of Salafist Islam, very austere, very much no music, women have to be veiled, very strict. Then they have these internet preachers that basically record podcasts and spread them all over, and it becomes very easy to spread. And actually, let's face it, there's all sorts of geopolitical actors who spread it and support it for their own motives. I won't go too much into that. In a way, the kind of extremism that resulted in a bunch of terrorist attacks, that resulted in a state crackdown on Xinjiang, is not indigenous to the Uyghurs. When you have basically radical Islam boys and men running around threatening people for playing musical instruments at a Uyghur wedding, when Uyghur wedding always had music and dancing, it's such an important thing for them to have music and dancing, you realize this is not a fight between tradition and the evil CCP. It's actually a malignant foreign radical ideology that is in opposition to traditional Uyghur beliefs. And the CCP, or the Chinese government, is actually, obviously, they're trying to get rid of the radicalism, but they're also trying to do a lot to shore up the traditional Uyghur folkways, the traditional Uyghur music, the traditional Uyghur dance and dress, because they, maybe belatedly, but they see upholding this traditional Uyghur culture as being a really important ingredient in preventing radicalization. Yeah, so I think that's sort of thing that people get twisted. People think that the Chinese government are trying to stamp out traditional Uyghur culture. They're not. They're actually trying to promote it. What they are trying to stamp out is radicalism, and that, as I've explained, that radical Islam is in opposition to traditional Uyghur culture, right? It is traditional Uyghur culture. Women were very colorfully dressed. And that is actually the variety of Islam they've had in Xinjiang for hundreds of years. And before that, they had different religions. Oh, it's all very interesting. For a while, the Uyghurs had a different religion. And I think all sorts of religions thrived in Xinjiang. They went to a museum and they were Zoroastrians, and they were Nestorian Christians.
From Persia. Yeah. Persia had that before Islam took over.
Like during the Tang Dynasty or something. But I think the Uyghurs were not even, I don't think they were even in Xinjiang. So I think that's another lesson you learn after you learn the history of Xinjiang. Everybody's an immigrant at some point. But yeah, so I think when you really learn the history of the place, like a lot of this narrative just seemed ridiculous. And yeah, that's all I can say. And it's really funny because I feel like everybody there was just so chill. People were, like I said, people love music there. Don't get me wrong, it's not like they're playing all the places where I heard traditional folk Uyghur music was very touristy. Let's face it. It's no longer like I'm sure they play it at a wedding or something, but they love all sorts of music. They play everything from rap to mandopop. It was very surreal being in that Uyghur pub, and the Uyghur singer and band was playing Tonghua, the mandopop classic, and the people were like breaking out their not their lighters, but their phone lights and doing that thing. And I was like, wow, mind blown. When people say things like, Xinjiang is the world's biggest open air prison, when they say that there's a genocide of the Uyghurs going on, and you're there, you're surrounded by Uyghur people, and you're just like the
And
biggest.
celebrating their own
The
cultures.
well, they're speaking Uyghur everywhere. The Uyghur signs everywhere. There are definitely places where you're just like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm just having a good time. The biggest atrocity I witnessed in Kashgar was the fact that we were drinking crappy Budweiser beer. So really, I think it's, I don't know, it's when you have real atrocity going on in the world right now, and the same people are both denying that there's an atrocity going, that there's a genocide going on in Gaza, even though we see photos of it, videos of it on our feeds for like years now, and now in Lebanon too, and Israel's picking off journalists like there's some kind of game. And then people turn around and say, oh no, the real genocide is in Xinjiang. And I just went there, and it's lovely. It really makes you think. It's like, why is everybody fixated on the invisible genocide, but they're so hell-bent on dismissing the genocide that we all see? This is the funny thing. Isn't it funny? Isn't it funny? Because I've had arguments with people about this, because people will say, Angelica, you went on a propaganda tour. You were propagandized. You were like, no, but literally our party didn't have any minders with us. We were free to go wherever, talk to whoever we wanted to. And we were like running around, right? We were not on a prescribed path or anything. We went down different places. We talked to people. We were like going to the touristy areas, not so touristy areas. We did a mix. And it wasn't just us, right? Obviously, we couldn't have seen that many places, but there were so many tourists doing the same thing at us. And it wasn't even tourism season. And you're telling me, with all these tourists running around, plus the fact that all those people, locals with phones, everybody's got a little movie making studio in their pockets now, and you're telling me there's not a single video, there's no real photos except these like weird like satellite images. This is a concentration camp or whatever. At a certain point, I'm just like, your standard of evidence for believing in a genocide in China is weirdly different from anywhere else in the world. It really brings some questions to mind now that we're in 2026. And I should say that during COVID, where people couldn't travel, like, of course, I had some questions, because what evidence there is out there is there's a lot of personal, firsthand evidence of atrocity. And I don't want to say that nobody got abused. Don't want to say that there wasn't a crackdown. But to me, at some point, it becomes very questionable when it seems like you don't have any collaborating evidence. That is not like somebody saying, oh, and this horrible thing happened. And I had a friend who told me, oh, I was there and you could feel the oppression. It was like the obvious example of oppression I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, what exactly did you see? Do you have video? Do you have photos? And he's, no, but I can send you this report. I'm like, apparently that's just what it is. You have these reports, right? And when you dig into those reports, they seem to refer to other reports, and it's a very circular operation. And
I'll say it's like
yeah,
the current AI circle jerk, but this is the disinformation circle jerk, specifically about
yeah, exactly.
China's oppression, right?
And I just feel like it's really hard to get to the bottom of anything when there's that much bad information flying around. I was just on Twitter the other day, and somebody was passing along this grainy video of what looks like an official building. And they say that it's in Korla in Xinjiang. And it says Korla Alcohol Training Camp. And they're saying This is an official Chinese government facility to make Uyghurs drink alcohol against their beliefs. And that is why it looks all official and it says Korla Alcohol Training Camp. I was like, wow, this sounds really sketchy. I didn't remember seeing anything like that in Xinjiang. I looked it up. It turns out to be a meme bar concept. Imagine if you had I don't know, a coffee store named Coffee Academy or something like that. As if they faked the same font as a Chinese official building and they called it like alcohol training camp. And obviously it's a joke. And to prove that it's a joke, I actually found another one in a totally different city in Heilongjiang. There are no Uyghurs there. I put up all the information on Twitter and got blocked by some people for my troubles. And even though they were all sorts of, for them, it was like proof positive. And I'm just like, wow, you guys aren't even looking into it. And you guys aren't, when I gave you proof that what you thought was something was actually nothing, you didn't acknowledge it. You didn't thank me. Instead, you blocked me. And what does that say about your motivations? Your motivations are not to help the Uyghurs. Your motivations are not to find out the truth. Your motivation is to smear China. And it actually has really important real world consequences because let's face it, the only reason why, I shouldn't say the only reason, but a big part of the reason why there were trouble in places like Xinjiang in the first place is because lack of development. So back in the day, they really had this policy of the minorities, they govern themselves, just let them be. That doesn't work when you have a rapidly changing and modernizing country. And if you just let people be, you end up creating inequality. And they can see the rest of the country getting wealthy, and they're not wealthy. And that really spurs resentment. And the Chinese, I think the reason why they were able to tackle extremism so successfully, and because they weren't just doing, I don't even want to say re-education because that sounds so negative. I would say it's called deprogramming people from radical Salafist ideas, deprogramming people from potential terrorist activities, which I think is actually a good idea. But they didn't just do that. They actually provided economic opportunities for people to get ahead. And the people who are spreading this Uyghur genocide narrative and the separatist narrative, they're doing the opposite. They're saying to Western companies, don't buy cotton from Xinjiang because it's picked by slave labor. Even though that doesn't even make any sense because America actually sells a lot of John Deere cotton pickers to Xinjiang. And why would they do that if they were being picked with Uyghur slave labor? People even say that the solar panel coming out of China are so cheap because they're made with Uyghur slave labor. That's got to be not just the most efficient, but invisible, like invisible Uyghur elves are apparently the reason why Chinese photovoltaic. And well, the thing is, do they not know anything about how China has managed to make itself into such a big tech behemoth? It's through capital investment, it's through rapid product iteration cycles, and it's whatever it is, it's not because they're keeping a bunch of Uyghurs in the factory to do work for free.
The Uyghur slave labor force that's just doing all the heavy lifting, making this magic happen, right?
And it's like, wow, you're actually, what you're doing is you're making people say, do we want to hire Uyghurs? Because if people realize that we're using Uyghur labor to do anything, then we might not be able to export our products. So you're, in a way, all this, like the Uyghur human rights industrial complex is just impoverishing Uyghur people.
Yeah, let's say if their intention was actually to help the Uyghurs, which obviously it's not. By doing all that, they are making things very counterproductive, as you just mentioned. Yeah, there's so much I want to add. Yeah, thank you for the level of detail you went into, right? Like the biggest thing I learned is the history of the various sects of Islam that developed in the region. I didn't realize Sufi Islam was like that big in Xinjiang because I my understanding of the religion is pretty light, but having read a bit of Rumi's work, like his quotes here and there, wow, like this really resonates with me, right? He's if I call it, it's like more mysticism, right? Mystic Islam, and focus more on your direct experience with God or Allah, and less about whatever rituals and dogma and bullshit that people come up with, right? And yeah, so quite like what I've seen with Sufi so far. And regarding the accusations, right, with all the atrocities that have been going on in Gaza and the West pretending so much of the West pretending that nothing's happening, and then whereas in China, China's actually building up traditional Uyghur culture while keeping radical Islam at bay. And they're the ones that are like, accused of the atrocities that never happened. One phrase I like to keep using is the accusations are confessions, right? Like the people that are always accusing China of this and that are the ones who are actually guilty of said things. And yeah, it gets kind of frustrating for those in the know, right? When you see just the blatant amount of lying we're faced on a daily basis, and also just seeing the people, I don't blame it as much. Let's say the normies, right? They'll fell for this psyop. Because I was a normie that fell for that psyop, right?
Yeah, we
Like,
were both
uh,
known for the
I
psyop.
I remember 6 years ago. Okay, I was my girlfriend at the time who was also Taiwanese, and we're in America at the time. That was a little after the Hong Kong riots came out, and then they were focusing on the Uyghur and internment camps, and I ate that shit up. Just, oh my God, like China is so bad.
So
And then
bad.
yeah, so bad. And like, I would, and my ex, like she didn't really pay too much attention to that. I was like projecting on her. I was, oh, how can you not share about this stuff? Is you're and I was like, oh, you're a bad person too. I was just like projecting so much. The reason why I don't blame the masses or normies as much is because you're just bombarded with all that bullshit like 24/7. And unless you really dig into it, it's really hard to find what's real and what's not. And like you said, so much of the information that's flying around is just straight fake news
Yes.
that's manufactured to push people a certain way.
And I also have to say, the Chinese government at the time, they did not release as much information about the terrorist activities that happened as they could have. There are reasons for that because they were extremely bloody and they, I don't know, it was wise of them because I think internationally they lost a lot of sympathy, but they actually suppressed how bloody a lot of the separatist activity was because they didn't want to cause racial animosity between the Han population and the local Uyghur population. They did release it afterwards, and I've been told there is like one series in particular that I should watch called, and I think it means something like the Tianshan Still Stands. And maybe sometime we should watch it together because apparently it's very bloody and depressing and I don't want to watch it alone. But it's like, yeah, there was some bad stuff that went down because there were some radicalized Uyghur who were like doing ISIS shit. And when I say do ISIS shit, I don't mean just like bad. Of course, it's bad. And they killed, by the way, they killed Han, they killed Uyghur, they killed everybody. They literally went off to join ISIS. Some of the
Oh,
Uyghurs fighters that left Xinjiang, they ended up in Afghanistan and they did stuff like there's a group of people called the Hazara in Afghanistan who are Shia, whereas everybody else is Sunni. So they ended up like killing a lot of Shia in Afghanistan, including like bombing mosques. And that they went to Syria, Uyghur fighters went to Syria and they're fighting with like actual ISIS. We're fighting
Yes,
with the
yes, yes.
actual ISIS. And so they're doing all the head chopping and with the women and stuff like that. And you just realize, wow, it's actually something that should be studied. Now, I don't know. Were they too draconian in their crackdowns? I don't know because I'm not a counterterrorism expert. But to me, it should be studied in a neutral way because Xinjiang had a radical Islam problem, and now it does not. You have tourists again. You can go, people are safe again. And you know what? Radical Islam is a problem in a lot of places. And
Mhm.
why is it that China was able to solve the problem and give people a way forward? I think it's
Mhm.
something that needs to be studied. Yeah, and so I don't want to I don't want to downplay anything because there were terrorism activities that was quite serious. Xinjiang was not safe for a while. People were knifed at train stations. And then there was a crackdown, and the crackdown was draconian. I don't want to like paper over that too. It wasn't just magic unicorn stuff that happened. It was counterterrorism that happened.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then they moved to realizing that people need an economic way up and people need to be integrated in the economy. And actually, Kashgar is going to be amazing. It's actually been paired with Shenzhen as a sister city. And the way
Mhm.
it works is the experience of Shenzhen in being a special economic zone is being applied to Kashgar. So you know how Shenzhen
Mhm.
got super wealthy? It's now one of the wealthiest cities in China because it became a special economic zone that traded all over the world through the port. They're developing Kashgar like a Shenzhen on land. And instead of having a port, it's going to be a dry port. It's going to export all over the Silk Road networks, and it's going to be a
Mhm. Mhm.
manufacturing hub. So it's going to have tourism and it's going to have manufacturing. Plus, Xinjiang already has so much natural resources, mining, oil and gas. It's going to be a really bright future for the people there. And I'm excited for it. I'm excited for all the development that's
Mhm.
going to happen.
Yeah, that's awesome. I vaguely recall seeing the plans for Kashgar. So similar to Shong'an in Hebei, right, near Beijing, they're gonna create Shenzhen-like economic zones that will shine down the line. So I'm excited to see how they become in probably 10, 20 years. But these things take time. Yeah, I'm excited to see what they become. To touch on the crackdown on radical Islam, we don't want to sugarcoat things, right? Like the state had to do more heavy-handed um, strategies
Mm-hmm.
to keep radical Islam in line. I think they did the right thing and instructed a good balance by enforcing order, yet not overdoing it. And like you said, now Xinjiang is a safe place for everyone, tourists, to come in, which is a huge difference from before. Right? Like you said, with the ISIS activity, when I was in Xi'an last month, I met a local there whose relatives encountered a tragedy with the radical Islam attacks. So it definitely ruined many people's lives. That had to be controlled. Although I will say one thing that the PRC can step up its game is to do a better job with perception management. Right? Last decade, when all that Uyghur news came out, they didn't really push back, or at least whatever they did was just like not effective. Right? One thing let's say the American empire, is good at doing, still good at, is perception management, or at least spreading fake news. And how do we combat that? Or at least from the PRC perspective, how do you combat that from state level? And that's something that they have room for improvements.
I think so.
Mhm.
I think it's going to take the next generation because I think the generation in charge right now, let's say C's generation, I call them the boomerangs. And the boomerangs are fundamentally very conservative. They are not going to know anything apart from just get ahead and be very cautious and work very hard. They don't know about the importance of perception management. And they also, I don't think, feel like they can They don't feel like they can compete with the American narrative, so they just give up. But it's, or they do very safe stuff. I always say this, like, always another CTGN documentary with goats. They love goat content. They love giving goats to African villages or growing
Very
cashmere wool.
boomer,
Yes, the
very
very
boomer-esque diplomacy, right?
well,
Yeah.
they just
And
feel if they do things like they just keep doing things right, somehow people will notice. And it's actually not the case. And I don't know, they're right. I think the reason why I'm spending so much of my time exploring China and telling the truth on China is because I got sick and tired of being lied to about China. All my life, basically, I've been lied to about China. I read Uncle Gordon Chang's Coming Collapse of China in 2002. It's been a long time coming. And of course, the more I find out about China and wow, this is actually pretty cool, it gave me a desire to tell China's story. And the reason I want to is because it's so important. It's so important because we are Taiwanese. We live in Taiwan, right? We're Chinese, we're Taiwanese. And it's really important to tell that story because I hope it doesn't happen, but definitely there are elements in the US who are trying to cast us as the Asiatic Ukrainians in conflict with our mainland brethren, trying to set us at
yeah.
war with one another. I'm just like, why are we doing this? Have you taken a look
Racism.
at how things are in China?
Say no to becoming the Asia Ukraine. Hard no.
Hard
Hard
pass.
pass. Yes.
And it's just so unnecessary, and the conflict is unnecessary. And I feel like we Taiwanese actually can play a proactive role for peace. I think KMT chairwoman Jenny Wen's doing a great job in doing that right now. And I think ordinary Taiwanese, like you and me, especially those of us who happen to have the language skills to express ourselves in English, we're in a unique position to be able to tell the cross-strait story, the China story, the Taiwan story to the world in a way that makes sense to us and the rest of the world and is not so biased. The way I always say to people is, I don't know if my view is a majority view in Taiwan, maybe it's not, but I can tell you everything you hear about Taiwan, they're from a minority view too. And if anything, even if only 20% of Taiwanese think like me, those are the 20% that you never hear from. So my voice is important. And not only do I represent the 20% of Taiwanese who think like this, I also am speaking for a lot of Taiwanese people in the middle who are perhaps not as pro-China as I am, but they don't mind. They certainly are interested in opportunities in China. They're interested in also not having a war. The
Yeah.
pro-peace
I
Taiwan.
just want they want peace, right? They want prosperity,
It's
right? Yeah.
definitely not true that everybody's like looking forward to, I don't know. It always blows my mind when Western newspapers run another article about some like civil self-defense group in Taiwan prepare for PRC attack. And I'm just like, do you know how niche and marginal this stuff is? Nobody in Taiwan thinks like this. You have to really dig for the nutcases. And I have a feeling if anything does go down, they'll be like first off the island.
Yeah, they're swimming away to Japan or like Korea
Probably.
or Philippines.
Their
They're just like
spiritual home
larpers.
anyhow. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. One of the older thing you touched on that I want to bring up is how Zhou Enlai, the basically second in command of the CCP, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned how he was promoting Uyghur culture. That also gave me chills because as I visited the Forbidden City last month, I was looking up history regarding the place. And during the Cultural Revolution, Zhou Enlai actually sent a platoon of PLA to protect the Forbidden City from the destructions done by the Red Guards. So if it weren't for Zhou, then that extremely important historical site would be gone.
Yeah.
I like Joe a lot. He always seems like not only is he a statement, but he also has a very gentlemanly, scholarly vibe who cares more beyond just pure communism, right?
I
Yeah.
think gentleman is exactly the right way to describe him. There's a reason why he was just so universally recognized as a superior diplomat. And yeah, China was very lucky to have him in that very tumultuous time. And yeah, you're right. It really does seem like he was the one force that was making sure things were getting protected in that very tumultuous time.
Yeah. Thank God for him. Let's see else. So how has your perspective about China changed after this multi-week trip?
Oh yeah, gosh, I didn't even have time to talk about Xi'an and Beijing, and they were great too. I think there's just this. I feel so excited to be exploring China for the rest of my life. And I say the rest of my life because China is so big, right? It's so big. I remember running into this policeman uncle in Xi'an, and he can't leave the country because there's a security control. For security reasons, a lot of policemen or military can't leave China. And I was like, that's a shame. What if you want to go on a honeymoon or something? And he was just like, if there's something I can apply, if I have a really good reason, but I don't want to leave China because there's so much to discover within China. And there's so much to do and see. And I realized, wow, you know what? He's right. China is really like a little world in and of itself. And I feel really blessed because as a Taiwanese person who grew up outside of the mainland, it's just as much my home as it is Taiwan is my home because, yeah, we're Chinese on both sides of the straits. And when I go there, I might have a Taibaozheng instead of an ID card. I can go wherever I want. I can see so much, and it's new to me. At the same time, it's familiar, or I see the historical significance, or I connect another dot in, oh, that's where this food came from, or, oh, wow, that is something new to me. And yeah, it's a privilege of a lifetime to be Chinese and explore China.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I will say I really count our blessings for being born in a very fortuitous time period. Because imagine if we were born at the end of the first Opium War, during the Chinese Civil War, or during other periods, and the life would have been a lot more challenging than it's lucky that we are in a time when China is ascendant.
Yeah. That's one thing
And to your
that's,
point of
I was just about to say, I went to Xi'an and there was a lot of Chinese people killing Chinese people during the Civil War. That was only 80 years ago. We don't need any more of that.
exactly, no more brother wars. And to your point about how China is a big country and that just so much to see. And a lot of people have said the same thing about the US too. And I definitely agree to a certain extent that like in such a big country, you are blessed such that you never even have to leave. Then you still have a lot to see, especially if you enjoy nature, right? It's like in the US alone, there's all these national parks that are just simply world class. And actually same in China too. It's just until recently traveling to China from as a foreigner, it's not really on people's minds, right? So you don't really know what's there, but there's a lot of natural beauties there too. And that's something that I'm personally very excited to see.
Yeah, for sure. There'll be many trips back, and maybe in the future, more opportunities for you to travel China with Angelica.
Definitely.
So
Yeah,
we'll
definitely.
keep you posted on that.
Yes, very much looking forward to that. To wrap the whole podcast up, are there any projects that you're working on that you would like to share? And also, where can my listeners find you?
Sure. Like I said, we're still finalizing the details on the China tour thing. So, the best way to keep in touch and make sure you don't miss anything is to keep up with me on my social media. If you're on Twitter, I'm Angelica on Twitter, and I'm also on YouTube as Typology. And the very best way you can support me right now is to go on my Substack. That's where I put all my writing. It's also typology on Substack. And in addition to my work on current affairs and geopolitics, there's also a lot of good stuff that's coming down the pike about Chinese culture and history. And those are mainly for paid subscribers. So if you would like to subscribe, you'll not only be accessing and supporting my work, you'll be learning a lot about Chinese history. I hope to see you there, and of course, my YouTube channel as well.
Awesome. I'll definitely be including links to all your socials in the pinned comments in the YouTube
Oh,
video and
I
also on Twitter.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it,
And
Scott.
of course, and if you subscribe to Angelica's YouTube or Twitter, you'll see an interview that I did with her not too long ago that where I talk about my own journey and
Oh
get to see
yeah,
more of
I
me
still have to
too.
edit that one. Yeah, it'll be up soon. Yeah.
Yes. And thanks so much for taking time to chat today, Angelica. Really enjoyed the conversation, learned a ton as usual, and we will talk next time.
All right. Thanks, Scott. Bye.
See ya.